Once upon a dream, childhood haunts. Aurora Rose blinked. Instead of the expected dark but honey cottage with the usual paraphernalia, tidy hearth pots, a broom, the interior was much, much larger than it should have been, and also brilliant, blinding gold. When Aurora Rose's eyes finally adjusted, she saw where they really were, in an ornate, almost over-decorated room in the castle. Her castle, a room she had never seen before. The walls were draped in tapestries of golden animals, rabbits, deer, birds, a unicorn. An orange fire blazed merrily within a positively giant fireplace, whose mantel was white marble inlaid with gold. Huge windows with leaded glass panes let in shafts of happy white sunlight. Thick rugs of white and gold thread covered the floor. Brightly colored swags and garlands of flowers hung from every exposed surface. In the middle of the room was a golden cradle. Above it stood two tall, motionless adults. Aurora Rose felt something in her throat, a sob or a cry of joy as she realized who they were and whom they were gazing at. She crept forward, almost like a forest creature, hands clasping each other. She peeked in the cradle. There, kicking and pink-faced, was baby Aurora. Grown-up Aurora knew herself immediately. The eyes were the same, the pale wisps of golden hair the same. But while most people would have been endlessly fascinated by chance to observe themselves at such an early age, grown-up Aurora more wanted to see someone else. She turned to look at the two adults who loomed over the cradle. Queen Leah, almost like an older version of Aurora, with slightly browner hair, slightly browner, thicker, friendlier eyebrows. The princess saw where her cheeks would eventually wind up. She had all of their remaining baby fat, smiling above the high cheekbones she also inherited. But her mother's looks didn't matter. It was the look she gave her baby that mattered. The queen was completely and utterly enraptured by her daughter in the cradle. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. A very slight smile was on her parted lips. Nothing could distract her from her watch. King Stephen. Skinny, a little tired-looking, kind brown eyes above a not particularly royal mustache and beard. His robes gave his body some depth, and fire gave his cheeks a little ruddiness. Mother, Aurora Rose breathed. Father. The parents she had never known. The parents she was supposed to have been reunited with, only to part from, on her 16th birthday, on her wedding day. The ones who had given her life had given her away. And this was the only way she would ever see them again, in her memories. Her mother's beautiful, loving face, her father's well, kingly one. She couldn't talk to them, ask them questions, hug them. She would never be able to find out why they had done what they had. She would never be able to curse them or forgive them. Philip coughed quietly, clearing his throat. Reluctantly, she looked up. Standing by the fireplace was the woman who had let them in, along with two other women. One was in different, slightly faded shades of blue. She wore robes and belts and scarves and scraps of cloth, and even had quick blue eyes that matched, although they weren't faded. Her hair was as brown and as polished chestnut, and tied up in crazy buns in the back of her head with sticks pointing all over to hold them in place. The third woman was huge, tall and muscled, strapping and strong. She wore a red tunic over rust-red leggings and boots. Her dark blonde hair hung to her waist and was pushed back from her face with a simple leather headband. Her skin was tan and a little windburned, and her light brown eyes were dancing. "The fairies!" Aurora Rose cried. "Sort of," she added. Her memories still weren't perfect, but there was something off about them. Weren't they a little younger than her aunts? Or maybe they were older. They certainly dressed differently, and their eyes were different. "They don't exactly look like the twinkling ladies who rescued me," Philip whispered. "But they feel like them." "Nothing is exactly the same in the dream world," the one in the blue says. "Just as a dream in your own house seems different, with more rooms or things within it placed strangely. Everything here is the result of your perception and edited by the quality of your memory. Reality is entirely subjective." "She means don't worry," the one in green said. "Things aren't what they seem, but that's not always a bad thing." "You tried to rescue me in the castle," the princess said. "You appeared to me and told me to wake up." "Not precisely, not us," the blue one said. "That was a manifestation of the real waking world fairies, as was the one who sent Hubert to guide you." Trust me, if we could have come to your rescue, the one in red said, I would have come with my sword drawn and a thirst for Maleficent's blood. Philip looked at her with something like affection. Here in this room, you are the only part of your memory completely free from Maleficent's reach, the woman in green said. She spread her hands and smiled. These are your deepest, oldest, and most untouched memories. You guard them very carefully. So as do we all. But that horrible girl thing attacked us not far from here, Philip said accusingly. Just a little ways that way. Ah, the woman in green said sadly. The manifestation spoke, truly. Mostly, she was a piece of Aurora Rose herself, a monster from her own mind. Maleficent may have given her a nudge or awoke her fully, but she was always been close to the princess's heart. I don't get it myself, the woman in red said frankly. If it were up to me, I would have slain that nasty thing years ago, in the real world. Focus, please, the one in blue said to the red one. Aurora, this all comes back to the fact that you are the dreamer. You, in the end, are responsible for this world. Inadvertently, the beginning, and deliberately, hopefully, the end. Only you can end the curse and awake everyone. What we are experiencing now are the final effects of a magical promise you made 16 years ago, sort of a balancing out of a magical equation. To wit, Maleficent publicly cursed you to die on your 16th birthday. Then Merryweather fixed it a bit with an amendment about you falling asleep. But unbeknownst to all of us, Maleficent tied her soul up in the curse. Had you actually died, your life force, and that of everyone else in the kingdom to a lesser effect, would have been transferred to her. Instead, when Philip killed her, Maleficent's soul was still bound to you and followed you into your sleep. And of course, we can all see what the result of that was. Her controlling me in the world of my dreams, Aurora Rose murmured. And unfortunately, the lives of everyone else asleep with you, the one in green added sadly. An unintended consequence of a little bit of a good fairies thought they were doing by tying the fate of kingdom to yours, so that even if it took 100 or 1,000 years for the curse to be broken by true love, you wouldn't wake up in a world you didn't know, surrounded by the great-great-grandchildren of people you knew. All of which is neither here nor there, the blue one continued, but it's important that a curse of this magnitude and complication can only be broken by spilling royal blood. Queen Maleficent, Aurora Rose murmured. The one in red smiled at her appreciatively. You must return to the castle and defeat her, she said, hand on her sword. You must kill her once and for all. The moment she is finally dead and royal blood is shed, all will from their slumber arise and return to their waking lives. We will aid you, of course, she added with a bow. The princess let out an audible sigh of relief. She hadn't even realized she was holding her breath. Just one thought of the one in red battling by her side was encouraging, and having the other two around. Well, they might at least be good for moral support. But as the dreamer, you already have incredible power at your disposal, the one in green said. As you have discovered yourself in the end, this is your world. You control it. All right, Philip said, tapping his sword. We have our own sorceress, Rose. Good 2 hand-in-hand fighters, 2, whatever you and green and blue ladies can do. Against Dream Maleficent. That sounds good, but what can Maleficent do, really? I defeated her with help before. The green one looked uneasily at the princess. She had been growing stronger of late. I believe you can feel it, because we can. The one in red lowered her eyes and kneeled for just a moment before rising again. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but the death of your parents has only made her more powerful. She is now fed upon royal blood and is much stronger. Your Majesty. Aurora Rose shivered. It was like the nightmare she had been in the haystack, what they had called her, because her parents were dead, and they were now... She was queen. Queen. She looked at Philip, who gave her a sad smile, and the straight-backed bow royalty gave those of higher rank. She swallowed hard. Forget the word, she told herself. She had to act like a queen. Maleficent killed them and is more powerful, like she did Lady Astrid. Does she then takes something from them, their blood, in her staff? I saw, but didn't quite understand. The blue one nodded. She took my parents' blood and used it. The princess repeated, feeling first stirrings of anger. You shall have your vengeance, the red one said grimly. The green one shook her head sadly. Vengeance will not bring them back. Aurora Rose was in a heap a cusp of meeting her father and mother, from whom she was separated for 16 years. It is a miracle that even this memory of them exists. She will never be able to talk to them, blame them, learn from them, hate them, or love them for themselves now. She can only deal with the results of her actions. The red one shrugged. Vengeance might make her feel better. Also, it could wake everyone up, the blue one pointed out brightly. And a win all around. Show a little compassion, the green one hissed. Now the blue one shrugged. Not my thing. That's all you. I'm here to strategize. Aurora Rose looked back and forth among the three women, gladly distracted from the sad events by a puzzle before her. The fairies in real life have their own personalities, of course, despite their superficial similarities as ageless, chatty, loving ant figures. Flora tended to try to lead and make decisions for them. Merryweather seemed to understand the basics working of the world better, although she rarely acted on this knowledge and instead of chose to comment snarkily on it. Sometimes she got sneaky and went behind Flora's back. Fauna was the one who hugged the princess the most and often acted as an intermediary between the other two. The green one, Fauna, seemed more concerned with how Aurora Rose was feeling, how everyone was feeling. She was the one who had been waiting outside the cottage for the prince and princess, like she was the one who cared. And the blue one, Merryweather, seemed incredibly quick-minded and brilliant, and even snarkier. Flora was brave and powerful and ready to plunge into any physical combat. And not for nothing, she was built like a gladiator. They were all acting like extreme versions of the real themselves. What did it mean? She found herself drifting to the window. As she suspected, it did not look out on the lands beyond the outer wall. It was the view from her room on the cottage in the forest. Apple trees where birds nested and squirrels scampered, birch trees whose golden leaves lit up the window in fall, a corner of the tiny kitchen garden the ants tended. A peaceful scene that compared wild and tamed nature in a way that was so familiar it hurt.